Hello, innovators. Hope you guys are well. Hope everyone is having a great day and welcome back to another crypto outlook. Now, we have a lot to discuss in this video once again. And one of the biggest questions you may have from the latest developments in crypto is, of course, has my bias changed? The answer to that, of course, is absolutely not, because if you paid attention in the previous video, I covered a particular scenario and possibility in the event I was wrong about immediately dropping down from the boundaries of around $120,000. That, of course, didn't come through, but what we did see is the alternative scenario take out those range highs to exactly the level we covered, which is a good sign. The only real possibility prior to a sell off is, of course, just pumping through these highs before coming in to take out the lows and coming in to reject the trend line. And the reason I do this is for one of two things. One is to always understand where to look if I'm wrong, especially with a movement of that nature. People are going to be FOMOing, and I'm going to be breaking that down further as well. Simultaneously, it allows me to create boundaries and allow you guys to see boundaries of where the market can go without invalidating a particular bias. And because we've now seen the full upside squeeze, taking out those range highs, that for me strengthens the idea of exactly what I covered. We've only just pushed a couple $1,000s higher and we're pretty much back down to where we were anyway. So there's a lot to cover. But what we're going to be doing this time is something a little bit different that I've never done before we jump into the charts. And now we're going to jump onto the whiteboard. So I feel the best way to explain this to you visually and explain my thoughts on the market is with a whiteboard, to visually explain the process and essentially create a narrative and a story of what I think is happening within the market and what the market is currently doing. Now, it's very important to note something you may have seen me mention a lot on social media recently is how the market moves with intention. Nothing is coincidental, everything is premeditated. The market is manipulated and everything is coordinated to the highest level. And every candle carries most of the time, if not every single time, an intention to make you feel and think a certain way. So let's break this down now that we've seen this current movement. Now, of course, what I'm about to show you could result in the market moving lower if my projections come through. Therefore, the first thing we need to really do here is make sure Bernie is not watching the following stages. So the first thing we want to do is assess the overall trend and what the market is currently doing. And by doing so, we need to follow the overall trend on a weekly time frame, using the total market cap as an example. Now let's just say we've got our big move up to the highs. We've come back down, we've come up again, and we're now floating somewhere in this region. We've taken out the high and we've just pulled back down. Now this is a total market cap example here. We now need to understand the outer trend of what's going on. And by doing so, that means drawing a huge trend line going up above. And more importantly, the range that we're currently within. Now we've just taken out the range highs, and what we currently have outstanding down below is an untapped amount of liquidity below the range lows. Now that that high has been liquidated, the market has likely achieved two specific things. It has driven up in a very specific manner, which should also be highlighted here very importantly. It has driven up in one massive green, girthy, and very sexy bullish candle, which I will quickly draw here for you. When you see this candle, and I know this from even some of the comments we've received, at the very pico high of 126,000, we start to get comments saying, oh, it's pumping, it's pumping. And some people saying they can't control their emotions. Now, what does that tell you? That candle there is doing a multitude of different things. The main thing it's doing is greed, FOMO, and of course, euphoria. That candle there is generating those amount of emotions. Now, what do you think the market is trying to do when it prints one of those candles on a weekly time frame to those exact highs up there? And what do most traders do in that moment? They buy. Why do they buy? Because we've seen one of the ugliest lows ever around $108,000, where quite frankly, not many people bought. Now we covered, and this is very important, we want to see a bounce to give people the illusion that the bull run is back. And whilst we went a little bit higher, this has achieved the exact trick, which now tells me there's a whole bunch of new buyers within the market. And psychologically, we have achieved two things here. We have brought in a whole new wave of buyers within this level, but more importantly, the weekly time frame has closed back below the range high. So clearly, there's been an intentional move to the upside to fill sell orders from institutions, whales, etc. Simultaneously, a whole new load of retail buyers have just entered the market. Simultaneously, may I add, as this has now happened, you've got all the people that are long, all of their liquidation levels and stop losses will be situated from below the range lows and the recent swings to these levels down below the range lows, which is currently situated somewhere around the $107,000 level. So let's just say here, this is around and just below the 107K level. Anyone that was short from here previously has simultaneously been flushed out in the recent drive. What we've also seen on top of that is the weekly candle close and the market popped up one more time. So anyone that shorted the previous week has simultaneously been stopped out in the process. And when you see that candle drive up to those highs, in traditional teachings, it will tell you it's a buy signal. In my mind, it's market manipulation. It's an indication to be careful. I don't look at these and think, shit, we're going higher. I look at where the candle's got, where the candle's closed, and what that candle is representing. And for me, that's representing manipulation. So we've now targeted the range highs, and a whole bunch of new buyers are trapped here, every step of the way higher. What do you think happens now? And if we are going to see an alt season, what do you think the market is going to do before that happens? Most of the time, if not 90% plus of the time, before we get an alt season or before we get the next major leg higher, the market liquidates everyone and it causes a capitulation event. Because we are now trading in six-figure prices for Bitcoin, most people are more susceptible and almost psychologically programmed to view very small moves as crashes. You need to focus on percentages here, because the BTC drops we've seen from, let's say, 124, 125K to 107K, that's nothing, like a minimal amount of percentage. But because the prices are elevating, the drops seem more significant than they are. But I think if this is to go through according to my projections, now we've taken out the range highs, the market will need to break below these floors, because the key to capitulation is situated below that 107K threshold. Simultaneously, people will look at this and go, you're bearish. We're grown-ups here. And anyone that thinks what I'm showing you is bearish simply has too much money invested in the market or is completely naive to consider these probabilities. Now, your job as a crypto investor is not just to make money, but it's to survive. And understand that you must always have your eyes upwards in line with the overall trend. One eye looking up, but one eye also needs to be looking down at the exact same time. Because if this happens, people will go, it's bearish, it's bearish, it's bearish. No, it's not, because the overall higher time frame trend is overall incredibly bullish. So if we see a break through 107K, everyone's perception, once again, like I said, the bull run is back here, alt season, blah, blah, blah. If we break this level, people will start to say it's a bear market again. Just like they did here at 107K, 108K, when I said we're going to get a bounce, because sentiment shifted quickly. We now know that everyone's perception of a bear market is situated around the last local low, which happens to be the range lows. Therefore, if we break, we could be coming into that deeper trend line. And simultaneously, the market has been pretty much dropping for several weeks once it made its new all-time high. Shorts have had a very easy free ride. The market has now, in my opinion, intentionally brought in a whole new wave of buyers and simultaneously liquidated anyone that was short prior to most likely rolling back down. Now, should we hit this level? Torre, you're bearish, you always look down. Torre, this, that, Torre. Torre's bullish. Torre believes in an alt season, and Torre will invest very, very heavy if this happens. Because the likelihood is, I think BTC, if you've watched the videos, I think BTC is going to 150, 160K at the very least. It could even go higher. The overall trend is bullish. I don't know where people are getting bear markets from. But what I do know is before that happens, the market could do this. And that will be your indication to buy. Somewhere within the 100K region to possibly the 90K region. those levels do not invalidate the overall higher time frame trend. And what I often look for in these circumstances, when you see a candle like that, what is the market trying to tell me? Because more often than not, and why I'm even covering this, is because when you see this price action, when you see a weekly candle take out a range high and close back below, it often indicates a trap. Therefore, instead of being naive and ignorant, you leave it open to consideration. Because if you buy now and the market does break the range lows, you will simply be fucked. Whereas you can leverage the opportunities I'm showing you if they happen. And even if they don't, you should already be in anyway at this point, like I am. Now, continuing with that idea, now that this has done that, logically that tells me, and what I often look for when I see these big weekly candles, is what is around the corner. Because these can often be indications of negative fundamental events that happen to come out of surprise, or just something very stupid that generally happens in crypto every time we go higher. So in simple terms, I think the market has made us believe we are back, to drop down, to then absolutely go higher and go back. It's almost the pre-breakout before the actual breakout. And now there's a whole bunch of new buyers, leveraged, spot, you name it, trapped within the market. Who do you think will be the people that capitulate if we break? It will be the people that didn't buy there, FOMO'd in because of this candle here, up there, and then shot their pants down here and miss out on the actual rally. Therefore, whether this happens or not, I just want to break down the psychology and the story of what I think the market is painting right now. Obviously, if it doesn't happen, let it be. But logically, you need to take all of this into consideration. So now let's jump into the charts. Well, for me, nothing has changed right now, to be honest with you. And we are at such a critical level here, quite frankly, because if we now imitate the same process and continue what was just shown from the whiteboard onto the charts, well, there's a very simple procedure that's happened. And to show you this on the charts as well, this has just been rallying up. And the big question here right now is below this range on total, with the highs now liquidated as illustrated on the whiteboard, and the same as BTC, highs now being liquidated. For me, this candle was intentional, purposeful, and designed to do one simple thing: bring buyers in whilst completely respecting the boundaries of the range. What we've also done to pair is just cleared any additional shorters at the moment out of the market from that additional high wipe. And of course, naturally disregarding any short-term levels, which of course immediately is going to be the midpoint of the range, around 115, 114K. That's the immediate first downside target you need to be looking at right now. Overall, however, disregarding this, logically, as we often see, and as we did see here as well, once that range high is taken out, the market very quickly trickles down. You can get a bounce from the midpoint, but more often than not, those lows get targeted, specifically if the high gets taken out first. So when going back to our previous video, again, you can see not only was it shown, but it's really not much of a major push beyond where we were looking anyway. We've just taken out the highs, which for me maximizes the effects even without that debt. So the original zone is there, around $4 trillion, and this now becomes the next level of support for us in the short term. Now, the only big question left is to, of course, look at the altcoins here. Now, if we go to XRP on a monthly time frame, this does not look good right now. Maybe that changes, but this is very important what I'm about to show you. Go to the monthly on Ethereum, and we have, of course, all collectively across the board, just like I showed in the previous video. And these coins and altcoins have not really jumped up much, but we have now taken out the highs here and taken out the highs here. That should be triggered on. My apologies. Maybe it's not taken out on the Binance chart, but it is on Bitstamp and many others. Now, the point here is the market is obviously on the upper end of its trading spectrum. That goes for altcoins, that goes for total, that goes for BTC. So naturally, if this is due to happen and we are to get a break of the lows, just as we saw here, we want to be looking at the most local levels of support and resistance in this area. Now, for us at the moment, the most local levels are somewhat different, but it would logically be down in the region of 100K to possibly down to 90, or in the 95 region. And this is very important to understand because that trend line I showed you on total will likely become the clear indication for where we go upon a breakdown lower, somewhere in that 3.44 region. So this is naturally why I show you this stuff, because people will FOMO here and we get a lot of messages. I had comments straight away. The minute we take out that high, just before the blow off top, you go bearish. But no, it was covered. And there's a reason for that. If you trade with logic and you actually control your emotions, you will see it's nothing has changed. We're actually still in a range, unfortunately, as well, which is really annoying. Now, the only other possibility I can see here is prior to a potential break to the downside of these ranges. Again, this for me here is building liquidity. What an ugly bottom, by the way. Although I wanted it to bounce, what an ugly bottom. Like, no low wipe, nothing. And I think there's intention behind that. We've also just come up to reject into this region here. So unless next week gets one more little push to the upside, we have wiped this out, liquidated highs, and dropped back down below into the range, which plausibly means a pullback into the lower end of 115, 114, and inevitably back down to the range lows will happen. The only difference this time is I believe it will break, because it's been holding for so long, and there's only so many times a key level of support and resistance holds upon being rejected. And of course, anyone that's now trapped in the market from here will sell and capitulate if this floor breaks towards specifically the psychological level of $100,000. So going back to the monthly time frame, furthermore, monthlies across the board here have now taken out, of course, not just the range highs, but the monthly highs, which brings into play exactly what I'm showing you here. Now that these monthly highs have been taken out, you also want to pay attention to the fact that not only have these highs been taken out immediately, but they have happened for the start of the month, with 22 days left for the month to change. Now, as you can see from XRP specifically, things can change very, very quickly. Now, unless we go into eternal chop once again, which will be incredibly depressing, these lows will have to be broken. Again, the only possibility I can physically see here is altcoins pop up one more time to potentially catch up a little bit further. Now, I did say if this happens, this would be a good idea to maybe consider taking some profits, but we haven't really seen much of an altcoin catch up. The only one we've really seen outperform is Zcash, and I've taken profits out of that. So I didn't get any profits out of my other altcoins, but Zcash, well, I'll show you now. So from $22, we have now hit, with the innovation members, essentially 700% on Zcash. And I think this is always a great example of how to play the market, because I could just hold this forever and gamble, but there is risks within the market. So I've protected myself by taking a bit of profit. And this illustrates this here. So from a $22.5 buy, I took my initial investment out plus a little bit of profit around the 400% region. I then trimmed out a bit more here and then took the final amount out within the 600% region, leaving the remainder of this investment to ride, as we can see here. So I've now left the remainder to ride. And of course, this can go as high as it wants at this point. I do not truly care, because the remainder of my position will continue to pay me. But I have now completely protected myself from the downside, because this could also be an indication that if the market is about to roll over, some of these could pump beforehand, and it's often a very common characteristic. So we've managed to outperform the market on this one, and with a rather beautiful play, I'm now fully protected. If this drops back down, I will reinvest. If this continues ripping up, I will continue making hundreds of percent due to the entry I got myself and the members in. This is why I'm very selective with those entries, because people jumping in here, as an example, if you jump in from here, you're only making 50%, whereas we're dealing with multiples of hundreds, which is really, really important. Now, of course, because I'd preempted this was what I was looking for overall. So I've actually got some shorts running at the moment as well. So of course, because we preempted the idea that there was always a risk the range highs would get taken out, I've actually taken some shorts as well from this at the moment, and they're running really nicely. We're looking at about 15K here and around 3K on another pair. So almost 18 or even over 18K up on some shorts at the moment from this. And the market is entering a bit of a risky area for altcoins, which is going to get into the next thing I show you as well in a moment. But right now, I think we are in a pretty good situation. Stop losses are pretty much at break even at this point. I've got to adjust a few others into profit as well. But this is why I covered the idea that the range highs could get taken out. And if it does, it would probably be an even better entry point. So I got stopped on 2 entries with BTC first and foremost before the range highs got taken out, exactly with what I was showing you in the video. So I took 2 losses on that as well. But we're recouping incredibly well right now and pretty much got everything in from the Pico top. So I'm obviously preempting we could go much, much lower. Now, this is also the one that we took with the members on the account I show with Innovation. It's currently running at 3.5. So we're actually in a rather good profit right now from this as well. We've pretty much pinpoint entries. And if we can see this pursue, this is going to bring me to my next point of what could happen if these lows get broken. So as we now look at this idea, the only risk I can physically see, which is why I've put stop losses to break even, is of course before there is a massive rollover, maybe altcoins pop their highs. I mean, it's quite illogical that Ethereum hasn't popped the high one more time. And it's quite irrational that XRP, quite frankly, hasn't really popped into 3.4, 3.5 yet. But I took the risk on those shorts regardless because I just had a feeling, as always, the key indication for everything is total. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is, what do these coins do if BTC now flushes that range to there, if not lower, and if total does the same thing and flushes the lows? Of course, that raises the question of where Ethereum and XRP go. And as I've said from the offset, I believe this is going to be coming back somewhere into the midpoint of the 2.3, 2.4 region to the possible lows down here, which will be corresponded depending on where BTC goes. But I think in the grand scheme of things, again, what I'm showing you here is not bearish. From around 2.4, let's say, down to $2, none of this is bearish because it's simply a key level of support. I've seen a lot of talks of people talking about a massive accumulation here on XRP from a multi-month range above the previous all-time high. But quite frankly, we've been chilling here for so long, and it's really the same sort of concept as going over to the total market cap BTC on a weekly time frame. What's very likely situated below all of these lows is a huge amount of continuous buys and long liquidations, which will most likely be targeted. And again, if we're going to get a really explosive move to the upside, I really just think it's as simple as what I'm showing you. The market just pulls back down and we just start blowing to the end of the year, moving into possibly the early phases of next year. Same as BTC. Again, targets really are situated up in this region. I'm just being very cautious here that the market may deploy one more trap to here or there, and then we continue. I'm already in. I'm more, you can see from some of the investments, I will make great money if we do go up from here. But as always, putting aside the narratives of what you see on social media, risk must be warranted here. Risk must be warranted because if this happens, this will be your greatest buying opportunity and potentially the last for the cycle before the cycle finale comes through and everything explodes higher. So looking at these logical levels, the market is at a great risk here, and Ethereum as well. If we can continue without any form of pullback on the altcoins, bearing in mind I'm not looking at intraday levels here. Let's look at Ethereum. Ethereum has come in, flushed these highs, absolutely beautiful. I mean, realistically, the first level we need to be looking at is around 3,500 to 3,300 as illustrated here. But in the most extreme scenario, this could easily breach that 3K region like I've been saying and possibly cause one more flush of the lows. I think if we're going to get one more drive up, it would probably be next week where it just pops up and takes out the highs. Once we see the weekly closure, we can assess that further. And the same goes for XRP as well. But these range lows for me are a bit of a concern. If it does bounce from here, we still know the crash will be equally as meteoric. And it will probably be a good area to maybe consider a bit of profit taking, if not. But of course, psychologically speaking, the market is realistically showing quite a threatening sign here. The same applies to BTC below those lows. Essentially, liquidations, capitulation, is likely situated below these lows, and especially XRP, ranging like this for such a long time. So we're in such a vital level where, of course, the outcome could be a short-term shake-up, specifically with the double bottom printed here. And a lot of buyers would have jumped in off that candle. So we are just coming in to take out the weekly low as well. But of course, if you look at this from a monthly basis and look at what's happened already, Most people just do not view the market from a monthly time frame or weekly time frame. And if you assess what's going on, we have an entire month left to move, and look at what the month has done for these altcoins already. So because we can see this now taking place as well from a psychological standpoint, I mean, it does kind of make sense, to be honest with you, because altcoins are suffering more. Everyone's just bought into the altcoins in anticipation of a breakout. So if BTC and total comes back, first of all, to the 4 trillion region, we need to see where the altcoins are, because if it holds from the midpoint of the range, we could get one more drive up and altcoins begin to absolutely pop. Simultaneously, as we know, those moves can often be short term. So if anything, if we come into this region and bounce, it could just be where altcoins catch back up to the range highs here. We may even form a doji this week and move into something more aggressive in the following weeks. But I'm just looking at this with a very open mind, because we've now seen this develop. Of course, whilst everyone has just recently switched full-blown bullish, bearing in mind it was apparently a bear market there, I don't see any change here. And I think you guys need to be very cautious and just take this into consideration. You know, nothing here is bearish, nothing here is harmful. People, again, will have their thoughts and opinions, but the truth is if you don't look at the market in this way and you don't view the market in this way, then you will lose in the long run, and you're literally robbing yourself of such good opportunities if it happens. So as long as you're positioned like we all are, and hopefully everyone is, all you need to do is just know this: to either realize a bit of profit, never sell everything, but if you realize a bit of profit and this comes through, you will thank yourself. And if it doesn't come through, your positions will continue making you money. That's really the key to this game. And you know, in the previous videos, when I said we were literally at this high that we would go down to here, it got a lot of negative feedback. And the truth is, you have to always understand where those comments come from, where those remarks come from. And they're not coming from sensible investors that are profitable. They're coming from investors that are over invested in the market and using their emotions to dictate. So just remember, what I'm showing you here is very, very bullish, very, very bullish in the grand scheme of things. But over the course of this month to next month, we could very easily be seeing a massive, massive breakout to the downside. And if it happens, well, my God, if you're not buying from there, then you could potentially miss the final rally and what could very well then become the alt season. So just be prepared, especially if there is negative fundamentals. We know it's often that key characteristic. Trump does something stupid, a war ends up happening. You know, a lot of that stuff generally happens in that territory. So we're going to see how this plays out. We'll probably get a bit more choppiness, but quite frankly, I think at any given moment, minus a bit more foreplay up in the range high areas, we could easily get down to the midpoint of the range, at least by the end of the week as well. But my eyes are predominantly set on breaking these lows and coming into 100K. And I'm going to stick to that because the alternative scenario is currently respecting very well. So it's going to be a very exciting few weeks ahead of the market. And of course, right or wrong, for me, it's about making money and simultaneously protecting my money. So with that in mind, I am covered from both sides, which is the ultimate position to be in, and the position you really need to be in these areas. But I must admit, I don't think it's a bear market. I don't know where people are getting a bear market idea from. I reckon just the usual classic shake-up we get, and the market's going to absolutely send. But as always, it doesn't often do that in the easiest manner possible. Very similar trend lines as well. You know, if you just zoom out to the weekly on XRP, the market plausibly probably just needs to squeeze into this trend line and break through between the two levels. You know, I can just drag that up to there as an easy reference point over the next few weeks. And you could just create a massive zone down to, let's say, $2. And realistically, the market coming into there is not negative at all. It will just wipe the sentiment. Everyone panics and then very likely rally back up to the highs. It's really that simple what I'm looking for. But yeah, I mean, putting aside the short term didn't come through, overall, I'm still very happy with the outcome of this. And I think this is possibly strengthening what we're about to see. So let's see.